just managing PMOs to running CO functions. Uh, this is basically the Chief Operating Officer's office or the CEO role itself for various business lines, in banking, whether it's retail or on the investment banking side. So that was a switch I made where, then there were additional roles that started reporting to me, similar to the ones I've said in Amadeus. So a lot of the risk management, the operational risk management, a lot of the information security, a lot of the internal communications functions started reporting. So that's kind of how I've evolved, and Ketanji's already mentioned on my certification. So yeah, definitely very aligned with PMI. I'm PMP and PFMP certified, but with the advent of some of the new areas, in, you know, DevOps is been a certificate. The DevOps leader has been a certification that I've taken maybe in the last 2 years, and very recently I also got PMOCP certified. So yeah, I think since Gaurav is here, I'm under pressure to now take a Agile certification, which is probably the next thing on my list. Yeah. So I'll move ahead and not bore you too much. So with my profile. So I think before we start, the idea was maybe a quick um, um, exercise rather than us starting with the heavy content. So I've just pinged all of you on the chat on WebEx a link. Just let me know if you're able to see it. Please click on the link. There is a question on that link. And I will just go to that page, and there is a single question there, and I would like you to just respond to that question if possible. I'm not able to see it here. Okay, unfortunately, I'm not able to see it here, but okay. Are you able to see the link?
Yes, Karthik.
Okay.
It appears all are correct.
No. So yeah, the idea is it's a multiple choice. So it's a rather single choice. So that you have to pick from that. So just to start with, if you can all kind of take 2 minutes to, um, uh, if you can just take 2 minutes to respond to that, and we'll come back to that in the later part of the day. Uh, I hope everyone is able to access the link. So yeah, I mean, the question here is really, we are, all of us are today connected remotely. We are in the COVID times. Um, and we celebrated Independence Day yesterday. So I think it's a apparently apt question to ask, saying, what does freedom mean to you in this scenario? I know, this has been a tough time for many of us. We've had challenges with our work. Some people have lost their jobs. People have, suffered health issues, have had families suffering health issues, and it's not been really fun. But the idea is to just take 2 minutes and see the positive side of even this scenario, and really see what kind of freedom were you able to get. So I'll give everyone maybe a couple of minutes just to respond, and if you're fine, then we will proceed. We'll come back to it at some point during the day. Thanks. I can see some people responding. They've done. Thank you. Okay, I think I'm sure we can parallelly process it, and maybe when we switch to the break, I can take a look at what's happened. Thank you so much. We will now dive into the presentation itself. So, what am I going to talk about today? Um, the project management world as such, and the project management practice as such, has quite matured, has got quite matured. I mean, if I talk about it as a practice, it has matured, and it's at a place where we can say that it goes across multiple industries. And when I'm talking about project management, it is in a very generic phraseology. It includes obviously portfolios, programs, projects, etc., etc. But if you look at it, being a mature practice, it's still evolving. There are still trends that are happening and impacting this as a whole. Be it changes in specific industries, like the healthcare, which is really going a significant change with the COVID crisis, uh, or it could be related to technology disruption. I mean, or change in methodology. So, with the advent of Agile, with the advent of DevOps, uh, more in the technology industry than anywhere else, but definitely Agile, is more omnipresent than that, and is going across industries. So there are these number of trends that seem to be, kind of interacting, interplaying with um, the project management practice as such. And what seems to be happening out of it? Is it really helping, making it more efficient? Is it really advancing it? Is it creating confusion? Is it creating, as I like to call it, a khichdi in some of the cases, where when we will talk about it, when we talk about the portfolio landscape or the hybrid portfolios that some of us may be working with. um, and then most importantly has been, I mean, not most importantly, but unfortunately, due to the pandemic, COVID, that has also kind of influenced, um, maybe not as a primary segment, but at least as a secondary segment, some of the product management practices, some of the mechanisms we have had to work in. Um, it's impacted that. So really, my attempt today to discuss with you is, uh, what are some of these trends. I am not, to be frank, going to be able to cover all the trends. I have picked a few that I probably feel more attached to, and feel more interested in. So that's where my sharing comes from, and some of it I've experienced. So I think it's a mix of that. It is not all encompassing. I mean, clearly there are many other trends that are happening. um, and as most Bollywood or Hollywood movies do, I always want to keep a sequel opportunity, so I'm not covering everything, so that I have another opportunity for you to call me back. That's just on a lighter note. So yeah, I mean, on the technology side, for example, I mean, I talked about Agile, and I talked about, um, maybe robotic process automation or automation. These are also trends. There's cloud. Everything in the technology side seems to be moving on the cloud. So those are areas I've not really touched upon, because in some of those areas it is very technologically heavy, and we will need to get into that specifically. So that's probably the reason I've shied away. It's more my ability with technology than anything else. Uh, so without further ado, I will. Um, yeah, I think Paresh, you've raised a hand question. Okay, is there a question, or I should move ahead? Okay, I guess not. Um, Okay, so I think with that we come to the first topic. Sorry, I just got distracted. So really, the three areas that I'm going to talk about are artificial intelligence and project management. The overall portfolio landscape that we see, both in the technology and I mean, even in the construction, infrastructure, manufacturing, maybe financial services world, and then the impact of COVID. So largely, maybe in the first part of the session, I would cover the AI and the portfolio landscape and keep the pandemic, which I think is, I'm sure you will have some thoughts and opinions and views, not just on that, but would like to hear back on that as well. So that's I think, the way to go. Yeah. So artificial intelligence. I think you know on a lighter note, we seem to be talking a lot about artificial intelligence and not so much about natural intelligence, which is our own, human intelligence. But that's the world we are in, and we seem to be inundated and impacted by it in every possible field. And it does not exclude project management. So seemingly, it seems to be impacting. And I think in the last 4 or 5 years, there has been a lot of discussion, um, you know, futuristic visions. There has been a lot of declarations by uh, various stakeholders in this in play of this, and of course, there's a lot of linked research that's going on as well. Uh, but the idea is to give you a sense of where we are. Is it really, is it a threat or a, is it a boon or a bane, or is it both? What are the challenges? But just to give you also an example, in with examples and with some companies that are doing specific things, a sense of where we are in terms of the development of AI. Um, Again, I've tried to keep it as simplistic so that I personally can understand it, and that's my aim, and not to make it very technically focused. So yeah, I think Gartner, I think sometime last year, proclaimed or actually had I think a paper linked to this, where they or an article linked to it, saying that majority of project management activities will get eliminated in the way they are today by 2030, primarily to project management. I mean, primarily, the primary responsible being artificial intelligence. So that's quite a statement. And it worries people like us, saying, what does that exactly mean? I mean, um, and Gartner in that article obviously described, saying, the kind of activities that we are doing. Um, so it talked about a disruption, but I read it. To me, this was more headline grabbing, but I read it as more evolution from where we are, more than disruption of the industry. Or so it's also preparation for all of us on what we need to be doing or what we need to be focusing on. So before we start, a good place to start is to talk about what AI is, and I think that's a good place to talk, because it's uh, there's a lot of material around that, and it can get confusing. So I mean, one definition that I do like, and there are many, is the one that's there on the slide, and it talks about that artificial intelligence is really designing and building of intelligence agents that receive, I would say, interact with the environment and then take action uh, according to that, or that impact the environment. So this is a very generic definition, and I think largely we see uh, AI at play in various facets of our life today, but we sometimes don't realize it. So just to give you an idea on that, and there are really four today. When we talk about artificial intelligence, we mix words. We talk about artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, natural language processing. So you will see, and if you read, people are intermingling these topics, and the reason is primarily that the technology is overlapping across all these areas. So just to give you a quick catch on what uh, AI can mean. Largely, if you look at machine learning, a good example to talk about is Netflix, right? So Netflix looks at your behavior pattern, which means what kind of stuff that you watch. They look at obviously many other factors, including your age group, your gender, etc., etc. There are many data sets they look at, and based on that, they kind of do recommendations. So they do some kind of predictive analytics, which then kind of comes as recommendations to you, and you say, okay, um, this looks like a good program for me to watch. So if Game of Thrones is something that interests you, I haven't seen it, but if that is something that interests you, then there may be some other recommendations also linked to that. Or for example, if Ketan is watching Game of Thrones, then they may recommend that to me. So I don't know, Ketan, whether you watch it or not, but that's how it works. An example on natural language processing is very omnipresent with some of us, with Google Home, or with the Alexa, or with Siri on your phones, or on your laptop. So that's primarily trying to interpret and take away the complexity of you having to deal with um, uh, computer languages, or specified statements in a specific way, which are difficult for you to understand and maybe easier for the systems that you interact with. The idea is that you continue to communicate in a way that is natural to you, and these systems and these intelligences will be able to um, uh, kind of interpret that and bring the response to you. So again, there is a lot of futuristic talk, but again, these are areas where we have moved ahead. I come from the travel industry, and there, while things are very difficult right now, um, ticket booking through Alexa is not too much in the future. So it is something that people are working on today. Um, Deep learning is I think just to simplify, is a deeper avatar of machine learning. Uh, and the idea is that you obviously provide a lot of data sets, a lot of information, various access far deeper, and obviously uh, the intelligence that it brings out is far more effective, but it's also far more complex. So it's also so the example there is Waymo, which is nothing but Google's self-driving car, which is now spun off under Alphabet as a company called Waymo. So obviously, the complexity in this scenario where a car has to drive itself um, is, um, is much more. I mean, there are too many constraints, the number of roads, the intersections. I mean, and we know that if we put this in India, we often have roads that are not on a map. It's a far more complex problem that we try to resolve with this. And then the last is visual recognition, which is being able to see pictures and being able to get information really out of it. See images and do image processing and get information. There's a product called Google Lens, which pretty much does this, and by looking at a picture, it'll be able to get you certain sets of information that are linked to it. There are, of course, many other, and I don't kind of want to spend just time on this. Uh, Importantly,
Uh,
PMI. Sorry.
Karthikeyan,
Yeah.
Karthikeyan, sorry to disturb, but some people are having some audio issue. They are saying that voice is slightly low, so if you can increase your volume level there.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, someone was saying something. Hello.
No, your voice was low, so that's what.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. Is it better now?
This is better.
Okay. No, I think there was just switching. My electricity was switching from main to backup. I think that's the only impact that had. Sorry about that. So I'll continue if that's okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Sorry about that. So yeah, I mean, overall, how is AI going to really impact? Um, are you able to hear me? Because I can still see some people saying that they can't hear me.
Karthik, you are loud and clear.
Okay, super. Thank you so much. Okay. Uh, all right. So, what are the kind of impacts that AI will have? And it's interesting. So this is linked to a PwC, and I've just for your reference. I mean, they are not on the slides itself, but all the references to some of this is available on the last slide. So feel free to refer to them, and if you have any issue with correlation, do let me know. Uh, uh, so clearly, PwC, I think last year did, or it was in 2018, did a study on looking at the impacts of AI overall in project management. This was a study that did largely in the Middle East and to some extent, I mean, it was a Middle East plus global scope kind of study, and they found five areas really that it had started to impact. These are primarily business impacts, business insights. I know, and I'll come to each of them in detail. Risk management, human capital optimization, action taker, and I'll tell you what that means actually. Um, and then active assistance. I think these are the 5 areas that seem to be evolving. It's not all encompassing. It's you know there are various other areas that possibly are developing, and there is a lot of research that's happening. So um, I think even Gartner, when they were talking earlier about it, said there are a lot of the clarity, and then we'll talk about it later in the portfolio around AI will get clear around 2023, 2024. So they expect a lot of the portfolios to adapt uh, these, and especially the portfolio management tools, the PPMs. So yeah, when we talk about business insights, what exactly are we talking about? So um, largely, I think here it's talking about. Okay, sorry, I was just getting distracted by a question. So yeah, I think somebody's asking about education and career path. So yeah, we will discuss that. Good point. Um, I think one of the things is obviously for you to be able to, for all of us to be able to get better insights. What AI will do is to filter a lot of information. I mean, today, as a project manager or running a portfolio or a PMO, you get multiple information from multiple sources, and this is one of the things that organizations always struggle with, to establish single source of truth. I mean, there are PPM tools that come in. There are various sets of other tools. There are processes put in place to ensure that there are single source of truth. But I mean, the scenario you look, and you will look more and more, the organizational boundaries. You're tending to go towards a more boundaryless mechanism. The vendor partners that you work with, I mean, not in every case. I mean, obviously, if you're in construction or infrastructure domain, the engagement is far more formal. But in some of the other industries, these boundaries are getting lesser and lesser clear, and therefore. Uh, yeah, I apologize for the quality of the slide, this particular slide, and I will send you a version that is better readable. So, on this slide, just follow what I'm saying, and that should be fine. Thanks. So, yeah, I think so. The idea will be that AI will be able to filter a lot of this information and be able to give you far better insights to make decisions. The other area, I think, which is far more operational and is very important, maybe will help us, especially where we have large projects over multiple years with significant complexity and dependency. So optimized scheduling is one area where AI is really beginning to do a lot of work. So that's something that we need to keep. So that and as I was saying, that the boundaries are kind of obliterating. I mean, that's a maybe a strong word, but let's say they are getting less distinct between organization, vendor partners, contractors, stuff, and things like that. And also, let's say the communities. It may be project management, or maybe an expertise community, or an industry community, or an industry trade body. uh, there would be virtual assistants that will be able to kind of engage with these different bodies and be able to bring content and expertise. So you could extend your organization further um, than the boundaries of yourself. So again, these are things that are to be evolved. There is a long journey, but these are possible areas that we see. And of course, I mean, with the enhanced data, with the insights, we have improved portfolios. We have expert systems that is able to give us not necessarily only quantified, but some amount of qualitative um, input in our decision making. So, here it talks about fuzzy logic. So, I mean, you can build logic that is not just purely mathematical, but just is able to provide further insights. I mean, with a lot of the data science area evolving maybe faster than any of these, then it will help us in moving in that direction. I again apologize for the quality of this slide. Sorry about that. Oops. Okay. So when we talked about optimized scheduling, I mean, just to kind of show you, are we just talking in the air? Is anything really happening? My PPM tools have some AI ability, but it's very limited. All of this is true. I mean, there is a lot of talk. There are some companies that are beginning to work. There are some leading portfolio to management companies and tools that are adapting. But is it at a place where it's where we are ready for mass consumption? I think the answer is no. But just to give you a sense slowly of some pockets where some companies are starting to do this, just to instantiate these things. Just to kind of run you through this, there's a company called Forecast, and that's come out with uh, what they claim is kind of an auto schedule tool. And while looking up on all of this before, for my own interest, I haven't seen too many tools. There are some PPM tools that do it, but largely is not present. So just a quick video on what this tool is doing.
Most of the time spent planning projects goes to waste. As soon as you're done building the plan, things change and you have to start over again. That's why we built Auto Schedule, a way to create project plans in seconds. All you need to get started is a list of tasks, and Auto Schedule will take care of the rest. The AI estimates the tasks and assigns the best person for the job based on your team's roles and availability, and provides you with an editable preview of your new project plan. When change requests inevitably come in, you can add them manually and see their impact on your team's workload and project timeline in real time. Click Reapply, and Auto Schedule instantly builds an updated plan, so you can confidently commit without overpromising. Sign up for a free trial today to see how Auto Schedule can make your project planning effortless.
Just to clarify, I hope you were able to hear the video. Just to clarify, Forecast doesn't pay me any kind of incentive to put this out. Neither does any of the other demos that I will show you. But yeah, I mean, sticking to that earlier video. Sorry, I'm switching between slides here. Apologies. I mean, this, I think, in many of our day-to-day lives, this is a pain. And I think auto schedule or Forecast is addressing a very relevant problem. I can sense that a lot of you would be running large projects, large programs across multiple years, across multiple functions, and obviously with high levels of dependency. So this is the kind of tool that can help. And just to tell you that it's very adaptive. You kind of are able to respond to any changes that come in, rebuild your project plan pretty much real time. Again, I'm not trying to say that there aren't other tools there, but this is the one that I felt was kind of giving meaning to this particular point. Okay, so the other area that's very interesting, and especially in the COVID scenario, it's become even more interesting, is risk management scenario planning. So I think again, I mean, not trying to be biased to large projects here, but yeah, if you're managing large projects, they have multiple year plans. They have a lot of dependencies. They have a lot of resources. This is a significant challenge especially when we are responding to scenarios that we have not anticipated, right? Like the COVID. What I mean by that is, obviously you are able to respond, but the time, there are organizations and portfolios that are able to respond. There are portfolios that decide that they want to defer some of the actions. There's a lot of replanning that goes on. In some cases, we shelve projects, all of the above. Now the question is, obviously we will not, I mean, we are not promising that we'll be able to predict something like COVID. I think that's beyond our scope of discussion, really. But there are some tools out there that are, looking at AI-based risk planning, and they feed into a lot of the portfolio tools we use as a standard. So one of the ones I looked up and was going through and found interesting is a company called Engine, and you can take a look at that. In a way, it's similar to the way auto schedule works, but what they're able to do is do risk planning at multiple levels. So it can If you change certain parameters and you want to do replanning, it can do that very quickly, immediately. And even if you have complex set of information, various data sets, various aspects, it's able to do that really quickly, almost instantaneously. And then it also looks at multi-planning horizons. So which means, should I look at short term? Should I look at, long term? Should I look at, long-term planning? Like, for example, the organization I work, they look at long-term planning as 3 years. Some other organizations look at it 10 years. So, can you have this multi-horizon view for your projects? Because, not to abuse the word, but we are in a VUCA world today. Things are volatile, and they are uncertain, blah, blah. So, it becomes more and more important. It is in a way assuring your portfolio and your projects a little bit more of the outcome. And you could avoid certain very disruptive decisions if you're using this. So if again, the four technology areas that I talked about, whether it's AI, ML, deep learning, natural processing, we are no longer able to talk about it independently. They are an intermesh, and we need to kind of talk about them together. So AI and ML, if we talk about them together, really, it's also that these tools learn, and so as we build scenarios and as we improve scenarios, we we are able to make it stronger, is able to give you more accurate information. So there are just as an example, there are multiple algorithms which a tool like Engine can manage, which is like if you want to kind of manage your portfolio, then it can optimize either based on the priority of the project, or it can do the traditional resource leveling, resource allocation kind of exercise. It can do based on the availability of the resources. It can do based on customized requirements that you may have. So for example, you're an infrastructure project and you want your contractors availability to be 100%, or you want them to be available only in this period, because after that it's it's holiday season and you will not be able to get a lot of their employees. So even something simple like that could be a case. So really, you could do multiple scenarios. It could integrate into your overall plan. It could feed into your organizational operational risk management. So again, that's an interesting area that is evolving, and we are beginning to see some tools. I mean, be aware that none of it is going to really give you something ready on the plate today. By that I mean, you will have to contextualize it, and AI is about building the learning capability. So so the other aspect is really how we tend to use our resources on a project or a program, a portfolio, or initiative, or even operations for that matter. So again, as we were talking about optimizing schedules, the same set of tools can help you. I mean, even with we'll talk about some other tools later in the presentation when we talk about the hybrid portfolio. There are tools that are there that can kind of help you identify the best resource for a project, best set of resources. So, and it could be on multiple data set characteristics that you can define. You can say, it could be based on their availability. It could be based on a specific skill they have. It could be based on a skill level that they have, so on and so forth. It could be a complex amalgamation of all of that. It can also help you, and that's linked to the learning and development part. And I think the question somebody had raised, I will answer it, and I think towards the end of this discussion on AI. Please bear with me. But it's also the other area that is really going to help is in learning and development. So I think often we say, okay, I am PMP certified and I'm running projects. What's my next level of evolution? And I go and say, okay, I think I'm going to run programs now. I need to understand program management, or Agile is a part of the portfolio that I run, or the set of projects I run. I'm going to get an understanding of how to run Agile projects. What AI will tend to do, and the slide on the right is really telling you about the figure on the right hand side is really telling you about 3 phases in which learning will happen. But just to simplify, I think one of the benefits that you will really get from that is to be able to micro focus on very, very specific skills. So kind of be able to bring, not just saying, okay, I need to get skilled on schedule management, but rather, what are the specific areas on schedule management that I am not really, based on the way the project is functioning, based on my earlier learnings, based on various other information about the project managers, or other resources, human resources, we kind of will be able to pinpoint what is the area, and that really helps the individual to understand uh, what they could go ahead and work on. And so a more generic recommendation are there in some studies in terms of what skills a project manager should go in the future, and as I mentioned, we will discuss that. So that's, I think, there, and clearly with optimized schedules, relatively you will be able to figure out excess versus shortage of resources, which you're already doing with various tools. It's just that the accuracy of it will get better. You'll have better reactivity, and the time to market, which basically means your ability to respond to some of these questions today, is is much faster, much faster. I mean, a simple example is, in many companies uh, um, that that do their budgeting exercise, the moment a scenario changes in the market, they go back and internally there's a extensive exercise that everyone is doing from their projects, which then consolidates up. It's almost a month process. People are using various tools, Excel, blah blah, to bring it out. The idea is to make this real time, and get that response real time. So I mean, Agile to some extent is addressing that with scaled Agile, with the lean portfolio management itself. But the tool set, some of this tool set, and the ability to make it far more accurate will come uh, from AI. And on the left hand side, you saw an infographic. Again, I'm sorry if that was not very clear. I promise the links that are there are definitely going to give you a better view of it. But if I talk about AI ops, which is largely in the IT infrastructure area, just to give you a sense of why I'm linking that to human resource management. So largely this is managing production systems anywhere, and it's kind of giving you a sense of, let's say, I know a network link is going to go down or is flapping, just as the bandwidth was going down a few minutes back. But if this is on, let's say, Flipkart's server, or on their infrastructure, and they need to um, kind of manage it, what today happens with IT ops is it's able to predict this flapping, is able to, based on historical data, based on various parameters. Largely, it's very quantitative, and therefore it's one of the areas which is quite easy to realize. So just for your information, one of the companies in India, it's a startup. It's called Gavs Tech, GAVS. They're a company that's leading in this area, along with other companies. So Gavs Tech is a company that does a lot of good work around AI ops, and if you're interested in that area, do look it up. So yeah, I mean, it basically, is telling the application, okay, be prepared in 10 minutes, your application is going to come down. And that's basically then, kind of give an update to the people, let's say to the person who's front ending the business transaction. It may be a website, it may be an individual, and they, or it may be a customer support team or a customer servicing team that can then say, okay, look, in 15 minutes, I'm not going to be able to process this transaction. So let's find an alternate route. Can you connect back after half an hour, or can we, process this asynchronously, or can I do this manually? Whatever the answer may be. So the idea is that what does this help? This helps you allocate your resources effectively, because if, for example, your approach is much more reactive, then what happens is that at the same time, the person handling the business transaction, the person handling the application, and the person handling the IT infrastructure are all working together on it. Whereas if we are in a more predictive model, we are able to manage it with efficient resource allocation. Of course, I mean, there could be false triggers, there could be other challenges, and that's definitely part and parcel, and that is the learning that the system needs to bring, and that does take time. It does not happen overnight. It takes a reasonable time. I'm just doing a quick check on the clock. Okay, so the other area that that we talked about was on you know active assistants or virtual assistants. A lot of you are used to it. I'm still slow with Alexa. Alexa understands my son better than me, so it's quite challenging. But for some of us, I think it's um, they're quite comfortable to leverage virtual assistants for their help. What will tend to happen, and it's also a thing of the future, which is I'm sure through Alexa and Siri and others, we will be doing a lot of our project administration activity, and that's not too far in the future. A case in point is a company called PM Auto .ai, and they are largely using their app as well as Microsoft Teams chat. I think, and a lot of other tools are also doing this. They're using the chat, be it Slack or some of the other tech tools that are there, very closely linked to the Agile methodology. They're tending to use this quite a lot. Where you are typing in a chat, and a bot or a virtual assistant is interpreting that and going on. But this is really specific to project management. There's another company called WebSan, which is doing something similar with Microsoft Dynamics. So just to give you a quick view of these two companies, quick videos, and then we'll continue.
Hi, my name is Alan Rocha. Today I'm going to show you how easy it is for users or project managers to update their project status or KPIs using pmauto.ai. So let's take a look. I'm going to use Microsoft Project Online as my BPM tool, and I will use Microsoft Teams as my communication channel. So imagine the scenario that every week or maybe every month, your project managers, they need to update their project status and KPIs and provide this information to the PMO, the project management office. And then they need to open the tool, they need to find the project, they need to check in, check out that project. There are a lot of things that they have to do if they're using the standard tools. Imagine that pmauto.ai can do all of this in a few clicks and super easy for the users and project managers. So let's take a look. The only thing I need to ask Auto to do is update project status. By asking Auto to update project status, Auto will now ask me which project would like to update, and I can search for my project. So I will ask for strategy, because I would like to update my company expansion strategy implementation project. So I just need to select my project here, and now Auto is already bringing to me all my KPIs. Pay attention to what you see in the screen, because there are some locks in the top. That means these KPIs cannot be updated by you. So there is some governance and some methodology behind the scenes. Auto is smart enough to identify what is meant not to be updated and only allowing you to update the right status or KPIs for your project. So I would like to start for my project status, and I just need to select scope status KPI. Auto will ask field by field which information we would like to update. So project management office. And then they need to open the tool, they need to find the project, they need to check in, check out that project. There are a lot of things that they have to do if they're using the standard tools. Imagine that pmauto.ai can do all of this in a I would like to update my company expansion strategy implementation project. So I just need to select my project here, and now Auto is already bringing to me all my KPIs. Pay attention to what you see in the screen, because there are some locks in the top. That means these KPIs.
Shit. What is it doing? I apologize for this. I think, yeah.
Because I would like to update my company expansion strategy implementation project. So I just need to select my project here, and now Auto is already bringing to me all my KPIs. Pay attention to what you see in the screen, because there are some locks in the top. That means these KPIs cannot be updated by you. So there is some governance and some methodology behind the scenes. Auto is smart enough to identify what is meant not to be updated and only allowing you to update the right status or KPIs for your project. So I would like to start for my project status, and I just need to select scope status KPI. Auto will ask field by field which information we would like to update. So now for the scope status KPI, I would say that my scope is pretty good. I have a very straight document that is guiding us through the entire project. My research status KPI, that is not very well because I'm still missing some resources to help in my project. What is the value for the time status KPI? The time status is great, we are still on time, and the schedule it's perfectly aligned. What is the cost status KPI? It's also green because our team is working on budget and we are not going for any change without a change request. In the end, Otto will also ask you, after updating all your KPIs, he will ask, would you like to give some comments to the PMO? So Otto, it's asking me if I would like to be reminded later or I'm done, I don't want to provide any information. But in this case, I would like to provide some information for my PMO. And I would say, my project is going well. We are facing some small issues, but all under control. Thanks to pmauto.ai, I could easily update my project status with few clicks. There we go. What Auto is doing now is showing you all the information you just have entered. So I can see my status KPI, my resource status KPI, my time status KPI, cost status, and also my status comments. By clicking on done, Auto will tell me that now he's gonna update that information for me for the company expansion strategy implementation project. And that's it. At this moment, the information is being sent to the PMO. You have done your project status KPI, which can be done every week. And what we need to do now is just go into the tool and check if that information is now available. What I will do now is I will open Microsoft Project Online and access my Project Center view. When I go for my Project Center view, I will see the entire portfolio of projects I have in this corporation or organization. I now need to find my company expansion strategy implementation. So I will just go down a little bit, and there we go. My KPIs are up to date. If I open this project, I can easily see all this information already made it and updated by Auto. Look at this. Scope status KPI, green, yellow, green, green, and my project is going well. We are facing some small issues, but all under control. Thank you, Auto, for helping the project managers in the world to...
Okay, sorry, this guy talks a lot, so I'm kind of interrupting him. But I think you get the idea. I mean, while I know some of you were commenting saying it'll really help, the PMOs, but to me, it's also it's also very project management manager focused. So really, if you're on the travel and if you're, at site, whatever the case may be, this is an interface through which you're able to send your updates. So today the use cases that Auto is covering is the ones that we've mentioned. You can add and modify tasks, you can manage your risks, you can do a lot of the KPI and reporting, and it's just simple typing out. Of course, not all our projects are going to be as green as what they were mentioning there, and then obviously we'll need to send a lot more detail than this in many of the cases. So it's an oversimplified case, but just to make the point. Something similar, and I'll probably not spend too much time on this, but just for a quick look for you. It's a longer video, I will maybe cut it short.
Hello everyone, Karan Chandwani here from WebSand Solutions, and I'd like to show you an artificial intelligence-powered chatbot we've been working on. What we have here is a project management bot that lets users complete day-to-day tasks related to new and ongoing projects. It is also able to connect to Dynamics 365 and Project Service Automation, or the PSA environment. Let's get started and say hello to our bot. As each user will have their own bot, you can see it already knows who we are. Let's start by asking it to add a task to an existing project.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't make it full screen because it's embedded into the presentation, so I apologize. I know it's difficult to read.
We're going to select Monterey M6 Professional Services Implementation. And the list of projects do correspond with what is on Dynamics 365 in our PSA environment. As you can see, we have the Monterey M6 Professional Services Implementation project open over here. So let's go ahead and add a task to that project.
Sorry about that. I think someone sent me a request. I was responding and then the video got
Project open over here. We're going to select Monterey M6 Professional Services Implementation. And the list of projects do correspond with what is on Dynamics 365 in our PSA environment. As you can see, we have the Monterey M6 Professional Services Implementation project open over here. So let's go ahead and add a task to that project. And let's add in our task, address user acceptance testing questions. And our hours of effort. And we do have one predecessor for this task. And here we have an overview of the task we just added. When we go back into PSA, we can see this task has also been added here. Address UAT questions.
Okay, so I'm just interrupting that for the want of time, and like Gaurav posted there, you can go to pmauto.ai and look up all the videos are available. They are talking about all their functionality, but it's pretty much doing the same, and also for WebSAN I've shared the link, so feel free to look at that video as well. But they're pretty much doing the same thing, and the idea is obviously here that you as a project manager is able to have an active assistant that's able to help you with with large administrative activities. So I'm not going to go into the discussion of saying what it's going to do to PMOs. I think that's a separate topic. So we move on. If I can manage to click the slide. Yes, thank you. So I think someone was talking about the skill part. I can't remember on what are the possible skills that we need to build. I think I think it's a really good question. I don't have a good answer for it. I don't have a good answer saying these are the 4 steps or 5 steps we should take to get to being AI project manager. I've started seeing, which is not shared here, but I saw that especially in the US, they have certain trainings now, which is basically AI project manager, and they're calling it as an AI project management training, or it's not a certification but a training. So that seems to be starting. It's today nothing but giving you a view of AI and how it may apply to some extent in project management. So I don't think it's a very integrated content today, and that's my view. I mean, and if any of you have seen something different, um, you know, do share with me. Yeah, and yeah, I'm looking at Gaurav's prompt there, and yeah, correct. You're right. This is not a linear process. You have to learn consistently, and the systems have to also learn consistently. So we have to adapt. We have to be in an adaptive mindset that's there. But interestingly, I mean, if you look at it, I think on the left-hand side, this is from one of the Pulse of the Profession survey by PMI. I think it was a 2018 one, which talked about the role of project managers when it was talking about largely the disruptive technologies, and it said that cloud computing, AI, and IoT were the 3 largest disruptions where PM project management will either get impacted or play a role. And so the roles that some of us could get into as per that survey or study was that we become advocates of the technology, which means you get more hands-on with AI. The other is, of course, what Gaurav was referring to is adaptive learning. So you will build models and you will have to correct those models, which means you need to functionally know what is going on. So that requires project management expertise. Your knowledge in the functional area is key. And obviously, yeah, whether you can become an authority on the disruptive technology, that's also something. So actually, to clarify, advocate on technology is more evangelizing the technology. So really, can you take the lead, be the, create POCs, create MVPs within your organization, be the leader, be the pilot project in your organization, and authority is more getting hands-on with the technology. The PwC study that I earlier referred to last year, talks more about what are the skills that you need and what are the skills that an AI partner will need. The virtual partner that we were talking about earlier. What skills would that system need, and what would you need? So I think you will not be, and there are many other studies. There are a couple of studies by McKinsey around this, which I've shared, and there are parts which today largely a virtual assistant can't do. A lot of the coaching, a lot of the advocacy, a lot of the influencing are things that today, obviously, not today. Even the futuristic view of AI can't do. So we are a decent distance away from that. So clearly, what we are seeing here is data science, complex problem solving. I think many of the others are stuff that you already do. So collaborative leadership, stakeholder management, ability to make data-driven decisions, maybe linked to, to some extent, I think it will become more intense with the number of sources with data science being applied to it. But I think the key point will be to, is also indicating that your judgment will matter. You will be data-driven, but your judgment will also matter. So things like security and privacy will become far more important, because AI in this area is not, has taken some steps, but it's still far away in terms of being able to decide. And if you look at it, the earlier example I was talking to you about on the Google car, a lot of the challenges are not technology challenges. They are legal challenges. They are ethics related challenges. So till we resolve those, and for those we continue to be the best experts. The human beings tend to continue to be the best experts in these areas. Okay, some areas that the AI partner could look at is obviously, like we talked about, optimizing schedules, providing business business insights, risk management, doing some research for you, things like that. So they will be able to be largely data driven. They will improve in complexity, but largely it seems to be saying that largely it seems to be saying that we're still in the driver's seat. But there's a partner that's going to enable us better. Ketanji, I don't know whether this is a good point to do a break, because it seems like a logical stop for me. I'm okay with this.
Sure. It's your call. If you feel that you want to break right now, it's right time also.
Yes.
We can take 10 minutes break.
Sure.
And then we'll be back. So it is 11:40. So I think we can come back at 11:25. Priya is there with us and she wants to do some announcements. So we'll give 5 minutes to her for an announcement, or 2 minutes, whatever we can take. And then we'll proceed with our session. Right?
Hello. Do you want me to announce now, Ketan sir?
Yeah, you can do that also, yes.
Or later on after the break, before we start?
I think after the break, that will be fine. 11:25. Okay? 11:15 right now, so 11:25 exactly we'll start with your announcement, and then 11:30 exactly we can start with our session.
Okay, thank you.
Right?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Just fixing my video.
Okay, I'm just, thanks Ketan, thank you Priya. I think it was an opportunity for me to also know how much you are engaging. I really need to go back and check what's happening with Bangalore chapter now. Just give me a minute, I'm just sharing. So just before I start the content, if you can see the screen, are you able to see the Google Chrome homepage on the screen? Are you able to see the browser?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So just before we start, I just want to kind of give every one of you. This morning I asked all of you a question. Thank you so much for responding to that. I think we've got 38 responses, which is great. And but I think there are multiple responses to the same. Everyone has responded to multiple questions. So I think the top two are the top one looks like freedom to spend time with family. I think that seems like a positive thing. So that's great to hear. I'm glad to know that a lot of stories going around, people fighting in their homes. But yeah, this is great to hear. Interestingly, yeah, I think freedom to catch up on sleep is low. So I think that's also interesting. I don't know whether we are all telling the truth, or we really working much harder. Just pun. So yeah, I think those were the ones just for us to get a sense. I think there are no surprises here. I definitely would have voted for freedom to not wear formal clothes, but thanks for those of you who did. So yeah, just a quick view, just for you to get a sense of what we are, what we are thinking and what we are doing, and what really freedom means to us during these times, at least from this aspect. So thanks for being a sport and responding to this. And I will get back to the presentation now. Just give me a minute. I hope you can see the slide. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks, Ketan. Thanks, Milan. Yeah. So before I move, before the break, we were talking really about AI largely and the impacts of that. The other area that I personally feel, being a PMO director, I feel quite sleepless about is the portfolio mix that we tend to have these days, and how do you handle it? So this is not a exhaustive list by any means, and if I start putting everything, then I'm sure this slide will definitely not be readable. So I wanted at least one slide to be readable, so I did that. Just a second, I think I apologize, I took myself off the video. I'm back. Yeah, so I thought at least this slide needs to look clean. So yeah, all of you, possibly many of you are facing this. We have the traditional waterfall sequential project management mechanisms that still exist. There is still a very clear need, and there are industries and sectors and activities that cannot survive without this, and they have been the kind of the let's say the foundation of what we do today. There's obviously Agile in its various flavors initially, and then now going to scaled Agile, including now the disciplined Agile that PMI has introduced. If you look at the process if you look at this, there's also Lean, with some of these methodologies or frameworks allow them to use. Again, some of them are methodologies, some of them are frameworks. So that's also not consistent and hybrid. In the middle of all of this, you will also see innovation and that has its own mechanism of project management, which to me is always iterative, always evolutionary. One is not similar to the other. And if you are in positions where you are, or in not positions, I apologize, but in roles uh, where you are responsible for multiple projects, and you need to kind of get a view on how things are, and you need to share that upward. it's a nightmare. And it is also, are these frameworks really shaking hands with each other? The answer is yes and no. I mean, to some extent, there is some overlaps, and you will see that. But as an end user, if you as the end user, not so, for a while, let's not put the PMI or the Agile cap, but kind of say, okay, we have these certifications, we are project managers, program managers, but the end organization that I work for, is it really making it easier for that organization from a portfolio definition perspective? Yeah, it's arguable. I think it's a challenge, and we really need to move. And again, one of the challenges is a lot of the leadership does not yet understand this portfolio very clearly. They understand some parts of it, but then they are also playing the catch-up game. So it's very difficult for them to realize the operational complexity of some of this. Oops. By the way, I had a quiz for all of you. I'm still hoping we will be able to do it, and it's not going to be anything that I'm presenting. So hopefully it'll be a fun thing. But I just thought, since we are running a little bit behind time, I will and just check on the questions that we have in the end. And then if we have the time, we'll definitely do it. I would love to do that. So yeah, I mean, in terms of the challenges, when we talk about it, again, there are multiple sources, and I have picked here, this is not all encompassing, it's indicative of the problem that we see. So yeah, I mean, if you looked at it, Agile came into play to manage the fact that requirements are never going to be 100% fixed. It is the possibility of vague and uncertain on the y-axis that you see, versus vague and new on the x-axis. It's really there to manage that. But often what's happening is that if you do not have clear portfolio definitions, you go into certain projects with one methodology, then shift them to another, then come back, you're causing a lot of burn within the organization. And therefore, organizations need to clearly define. It could be very simplistic as well. I mean, the right hand side poll, which is just a poll with project managers and some stakeholders that were done, who primarily worked in hybrid project management environments. You can clearly see that. I mean, a rough example is that, yeah, you use traditional for rough planning, and you do Agile for detailed planning, or you do rough for very structured, specific clarity of requirements is there, clarity of scope is there, and you look at that, or it's industry, if it is specific, if you're doing facilities related move, shift, setup, maybe you're looking at traditional models, whereas if you're setting up your digital lab, then you're not. So I think those definitions in organizations are of varied maturity, and where those definitions don't exist very clearly, it's very hard for whatever the central function is, whether it's a PMO or it's any other function, for them to be able to define this. And it's further more difficult for the project managers then to adapt to one or the other, or the existence of both. And when I say both, it's it's in varied flavors. It's actually not two, it's probably 25. So by that I mean, it's not just Agile and waterfall, it's far more than that, and there are industry specific models that apply. So, and there's contextuality, functionality that applies. So it's not easy at all. If you're in a homogeneous business, if your business is digital, yeah, this is maybe it's a very smart decision for you to go to Agile. You are in the middle of a part digital, part brick and mortar business. You have to find your answers, you have to define those answers clearly, and you have to adapt. And that, I think, is a huge challenge that we're facing. Just to kind of link that to the overall portfolio project management, sorry, that should have been PPM. I apologize for typo there. It says PMM. It's portfolio project management, but this is Gartner's PPM Magic Quadrant for 3 years. The next slide will show 2019. I'm just giving you 10 seconds to just look at it, and I'll move to the next slide. So I'm sure most of you are familiar of the Magic Quadrant. The Gartner Magic Quadrant is a 4-quadrant that talks about various vendor partner organizations that provide software services in various sectors, software products in various sectors, and those are then mapped to a magic quadrant based on whether you are a leader or a visionary or a niche player or a challenger. So you're a leader if you have full vision on the product and you are able to execute that vision. You're a visionary if you have completeness of vision, but your ability to execute is lesser. You're a niche player if you have great ability to you neither have you have moderate ability to execute and don't have completeness of vision. And obviously challengers are one who are very good at executing, but they have not built yet the product vision completely, or doesn't have all the capabilities that the leaders probably have. So just look at this, and you look at I would suggest you look at the leaders and the visionaries on these two blocks for 2017 and 18, and if you go to 2019, you will largely see that it's if you look at it with a few variances, it's largely the same. So in the last 3 years, where we would have expected technology, where we've seen a lot of boom in technology, we are seeing actually from a quadrant magic quadrant perspective hardly any movement. The top 4 or 5 are same, the top 10, 12, at least 8 or 10 are similar. Very few new entries. In fact, I think, if I'm not wrong, Gartner did state that between 18 and 19, there is no new joiner or no new leaver. So, is it indicative of the fact that these are very stable products? There's great acceptance, and they've reached their maturity. So underlying, I think, is the point I was discussing earlier, and I think in the PMI Pulse Pulse of the Profession study in 2018 also stated that largely AI, cloud, and Agile, are impacting. And if you look at it, there are companies that have done in the last 3 or 4 year acquisitions. I think PlanView has been one that has done. Yeah, I think it was PlanView. But the other ones have been Broadcom. Obviously took over CA Technologies, and they increased their profile. A lot of these companies have brought in, done acquisitions where one of the companies have brought in the Agile suite, and they've already had the traditional PPM. And then now, if you see in the last 1 or 2 years, there are companies that are buying other companies or building AI capabilities. So in the top 4, I think, with the exception of, if I'm not wrong, either Planisware or ChangePoint, they are all building AI capabilities. Apologies. In fact, PlanView acquired a company called Aptage. Again, for want of time, I couldn't put out details on Aptage, but you should look them up. They are also companies similar to the other ones that I talked about, along with a company called AI-Theon, that are primarily focused on AI in project management. So clearly, some of the leaders are taking that step. Some are building that internally, but largely a lot of them are pushing themselves on the cloud. They are, integrating Agile portfolios, and they are trying to bring AI. So I think this is the trend. On the top, you tend to see, on the surface, you see no activity, but this is the trend that seems to be coming out. So that's, I think, largely the portfolio story. We could go a lot deep into that if we wanted to, but I'll restrict it to that for this presentation. So I think the other and a lot of new phraseology that you are now going to be hearing: new normal. This is the new normal. COVID-19, remote working, mechanisms of people being able to work remotely. Acceleration in digitization across companies and the pressure to do so. All these are things that we're talking about. I'm sure you've heard some companies. Companies like TCS that have said by 2025 they will have almost a large percentage of their company working remotely. In the middle of all of this, there are a lot of companies that are obviously where the need to be in the office is essential to the business, and they are also trying to see how they adapt. They can't go the full way. They can't sit back because the market is pushing them that way. There is obviously a lot of pressure on the business itself For some businesses, it's an opportunity. For some, it's a struggle. And really, the need to look at the opportunity needs to be there. So, I mean, this is not new to all of you. You are probably hearing this day in and day out. But I just thought maybe it's just kind of good to put some context. Thanks, Saurabh, for posting that. The videos on PM Auto. So there is some, the idea is to bring some context to all of you on what this pandemic has done. I mean, and I think some of the impacts are not seen yet. They will be seen later, and obviously I'm not I don't have a crystal ball. I mean, I'm just trying to put some thoughts together. But definitely the people that are able to see futuristic views and are able to build those are suggesting certain changes, some of them very significant. So without further ado, we can jump into that. Interesting, I think this was a working model that McKinsey put out just for all of us to know. I mean, this is repetition of what we already know. But if you look at it, they've looked at companies in three ways. There are totally 6 models, but primarily it's on companies that definitely need to be in the premises, while they're working, for sure. Companies that obviously have a hybrid model, and that hybrid model is multiple. We'll look at that, and then obviously companies that can work pretty much from home. And if you look at these models, interestingly, on the ones where we see the first one, which is largely where limited remote work is there, you will see that the cost of real estate obviously exists. That's large. That's a big pie. But you are still able to access the talent. You're still able to. I mean, the productivity is an important aspect. I mean, and I think I know before this session was there, some of the people were, a couple of people pinged me saying, we are tired about hearing just about productivity. We need to look at the other, understand the other facets as well. So, but that's still a discussion on. It's an interesting discussion on whether which is the model that gives best productivity, but very arguable. But we'll have to see. And every company will adapt based on some of these parameters. So if you look at the hybrid models, you're talking about a large centralized headquarters, and then there are people that work out of remote offices, but people spend some time in the HQ, but not all of their time. So then you also have partially remote work, which is multiple hubs. You could have multiple hubs. You could have multiple micro hubs, which is like across geographies, across locations, and then you have partial remote work, which is there are no permanent offices, but you have flex offices, which many of you would have experienced, where you just go in, connect, and start working. And then of course there's the complete digitized option. So I mean, this is kind of giving a view of how if you go from a completely on-prem to an off-prem, how the cost on real estate goes down. I think the productivity is largely arguable, and I would say that it's largely similar, and I think it's sometimes it is contextual as well. So the industry, the activity, so on and so forth, and we'll talk about some of the activities later on. The interesting part is the ability to access talent. This particular study thinks that the more digital you are, the more off-prem you are, the better you have access to talent. Again, my own personal view on that is it's arguable. It's very contextual. In India, and I think with some of the audience here, we've discussed this. In India and some of the developing countries, this is not wholly true. So I think it's still a very a largely Western worldview, but a lot of the developing countries will have a mixture on this, and I don't think the correlation will be so direct as well. The idea of this slide was to just set context so that we can talk some things that are specific to the project management as a whole. So I mean, this I think is again I think this is a study that McKinsey also did. Again, there's reference to it. And they talked about really here, um, in terms of project management or remote working, what is the blueprint for a leader? How does what does a leader look at? So, I mean, some of this is very obvious. I think when we're saying supercharging way of communicating, it's basically saying you have to do a lot of intentful communicating. Sometimes what you could take for granted in a physical environment, you can't take for granted in a digital or remote working environment. You have to be able to lead from afar. So you need to be able to demonstrate that you are leading. Your remote working employees need to be able to understand that that's the case. Um, I think basic things are things like finding routines. So whether you're in an agile portfolio or on a more traditional portfolio or project, an interesting conversation that I had was, companies and projects that move from a completely physical mode to a completely remote mode, that switch seems to be easy to adapt. But if you have projects where part of the people are, working in an office and part of them are on a digital mode, as we have seen historically, we tend to struggle, and that's been one of the reasons that work from home has probably not taken off as well, because there is um, there is a perception of lack of equity when someone remotely is connected to someone sitting in a meeting room, right? If there are 5 people in a meeting room and 5 people sitting disparately in a meeting in different locations, somehow the focus seems to be on the meeting room and not on the individuals. Vis-a-vis, if you compare it that everyone is sitting remotely, then that seems to have got more democratized. So that's quite interesting. And but to me, we are in this mode where people are going to kind of workplaces and coming back. There are people who are working largely from home, but there is a lot of hybrid that we're doing, and working in that hybrid mode is very hard. I mean, and I saw some people from the banks as well. I mean, when you're in essential services, you will not have a choice. You will have to be there, and then you're working in this kind of model. So it is much harder, and I think it's much more of a struggle there than just saying, okay, I move from an agile portfolio technology to in a technology company to moving to remote working. And that's why I mean, a lot of people in Bangalore are saying work from home is working fine, but it's working fine largely for one domain. That's, I think, the key aspect there. So I think a couple of things there, which I'm sure all of you are facing, is of course security has become very, very important. You have disparately located staff and employees around the country or the world, however you work. Uh, Tracking them at set of offices is far easier than this. And the hackers have really, I mean, apart from the ethical one, really do not have any ethics. So they have targeted companies and institutions that have been making losses. 2 weeks back, a company called Carson Wagonlit, which is a travel agency, was hit by a hacker, and they asked them for an amount of, I think there were multiple amounts that they were talking about, between 4.8 million and 6.1 million. But this company was making, since the COVID has been making losses. They have no business. There are no travelers, I mean, or very little travelers. But this is how hackers are taking out, and primarily their tone was that since they dealt with them very professionally and paid them the money, they shared the codes and other stuff back, to the company. So it's really hitting hard in certain cases. Companies are also going into bankruptcy with the combination of these security attacks and the business challenges they are facing. So really, security is of prime importance at this point. And I think going to the earlier point where we're saying it's a hybrid model and stuff, people are kind of getting a little bit used to saying, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this, but it may work, it may not work. And management seems to be I'm not saying that they are saying don't bring less business or less revenue. I'm sure the pressure on your targets and your deliverables are probably more rather than less. So, but we still think, we still have to be in this test and learn mode. And I think there is some acceptance from the management on it. So I think they are kind of a little bit flexible on saying, okay, try this, let's see, and so the scenario has allowed us to have that amount of flexibility. So largely, I mean, I'm not sure any of this is surprising for you. You've been through a lot of all of this. Some of you more, some of you less. Some of us are, thankful to be in the technology industry where we can just sit at home and work. For some of the others in the construction, in the infrastructure, in the financial services, in essential services, it has been a very, very hard time. And I am sure it has not been as easy as what we're talking here about. So, and I think you are still finding your way through this. So yeah, happy to hear any feedbacks, any thoughts at later post this session on how you've managed. I'm sure there'll be a lot of learning for me personally as well. Again, quick check on time. We are on 12 o'clock. So yeah, I mean, I'm just going to go through these slides very quickly. They're available for you, and I mean, these are some of the communication channels that we're using, and I mean, WhatsApp is not here, but I mean, I'm sure it's on the next slide, I think. But these are largely the multiple channels outside of personal interaction that we've done. And I think in some ways also the priority. I mean, an interesting point is also how the conversations have been. Have they been more formal? Have they been more informal? Have you been able to focus on what is more urgent versus what is more important? I mean, and I'm joking here. The joke that I should say here is that urgent is what you want to do, and important is what your boss wants to do. But yeah, or vice versa. I don't know. But yeah, I think it kind of, these were some of the discussions and thoughts in people's minds as well as we were communicating on these varied channels, and I know that it hasn't happened. So yeah, I mean, this is just a view of the various tools. I don't know which ones you prefer. Some companies obviously like Zoom have made a lot of money in this period. Some people don't like it given their security history, which I think they've improved on. But yeah, there are these multiple mechanisms, and a brief example of that is normally at work I tend to use Teams, and yesterday with Ketanji I was testing it on WebEx, and it was a completely new interface for me. And of course I always get my son to sit next to me, so he solves anything that I'm unable to. So yeah, so I think for a lot of us, shifting between platforms, understanding, sometimes it's looking at us completely new, and hasn't been easy. So this again, this is the one study that I can't give reference because I didn't get time to get kind of the approval to share it. But so they have taken out the name. But this was a study done by an Indian consulting firm, purely with the engineering, purely with the technology companies in India. And what it talks about is the various roles and how remote. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think someone is thanking all of you to move to WebEx. So I vote for that. Yeah, great. I think you were using Zoom earlier, maybe. Okay. So I used the right example there. So interestingly here, yeah, WebEx is really good. Yes, I agree. Completely agree. And it's just that I mean, I took half a day to kind of adapt to it. It's just my slowness. But what it talks about here, coming back to the slide, is remote working. The applicability or the advantage of remote workability vis-a-vis the perceived productivity of various roles, and in the COVID lockdown. So they did a survey. I think this is about, if I'm not, about 500, 600 companies that were in the tech space that were looked at in India. And if you look at it, interestingly, the arrow that I'm showing there, that project management, program management is one role or area that's that seems to be very conducive to to remote working, and is also very high on the productivity itself. I mean, possibly it's lower than some of the other ones like software product development, where it's more, let's say, more quantifiable as compared to program management or project management sometimes. So and maybe the outcomes are a little bit more tangible, and obviously we all know that the tangible, not every outcome in a project program management is tangible. So that I think is an interesting study for you to know that, and I'll try to get the official version of it and share it to this group. I should be able to do that in the next couple of weeks for sure. I'm talking to the consulting firm to get that. So I think it's interesting. It is correlating to the responses this morning. People like to work from home. It looks like a role that we can work, but again, keep in mind, this is largely technology, so it's not representative of the challenges that the other industries will have. But largely, I think, yeah, the remote working suitability may. Good question, Gaurav. So I think Gaurav is asking if there's any, if there's any suitable, if there's any KPIs for remote working. Frankly, I have personally not seen anything yet. It does not mean that I have looked enough or looked hard enough. There are some indicators. Yeah, and HR policies. Yes, very good. I think organizations are tending to adapt these, and I again see that. Yeah. Priya, it's a good point. I feel the adoption of this is very varied across organizations. I would say that there are so if you take the example of someone like TCS, because they've publicly declared going, remote working, they will accelerate on these two aspects. And the whole fact is, and I think in some of the technology space, I mean, I would say if I take the example of a lot of the agile driven portfolios and companies, they already have measures around some of this. So, and they're largely, used to working from home. So, there's a cultural aspect to this as well, which you have to keep in mind, which is, the adoption of such thing in US. I'm just making that comparison. Between US and Europe, if you make that comparison, the adoption is far accelerated in US companies versus Europe. Europe is far more conservative in the way they move. It's obviously linked to labor unions and other aspects in Europe that don't necessarily allow this to move as fast. And I'm not saying that the labor union stops it, but I think the enabling process takes time. So so and then there are a lot of companies that are middle of it. I mean, largely I see them as fence sitters because they're trying to figure out what's the way that will work for me, because it may fit both ways. So I think the discussion has heated up. There is more need in some sectors. It's easier to focus on the outcome rather than the time or the effort that someone is putting in. Yeah, sorry, I think Girish raised her hands. Sorry, Girish, you had something. So I think I would reserve that answer for a next presentation. While I've looked, I've not found very good examples of either the KPIs or any draft of a full HR policy around. There are companies that are working on it. Largely, there are smaller companies that are trying to adapt to this faster, and they have. If you're looking for any examples, I can share it post this session by tomorrow or say so. But I didn't see good enough examples. I mean, I think it's too much of influx right now. We need to give it some time. Yeah, sure. Yes, agreed, Priya. They are still evolving. They are still working on. So, and yeah, I saw earlier the presentation that Ketan ji and Priya ji were presenting, and they talked about all the things that they were doing around COVID and how they were working. How they were supporting a lot of activities which were linked to social responsibility, and it was great to see. So congratulations to you on that. One of the things we're beginning to see, and this is in small pockets, is also kind of a lot of ideations that are happening. I mean, this is just an example I put. This is a lot of ex-PMI members that are part of the PMO Global Alliance, and they did a hackathon. But I saw a lot of ideations, maybe internally within chapters, internally within various communities, on how we address the future. So I think we clearly saw things like job loss, crisis management. I mean, one of the interesting things was one of the projects we did here was also related to AI. So somebody was talking about competency and how do we build it. I think one of the projects that Gaurav was promoting, and this was his idea, is how do we build an AI-driven competency model and for project management. So there were some how do project managers play a role? How do portfolios play a role in a COVID kind of scenario? I mean, this is one scenario, it's evolving, but I'm sure there would be other scenarios that, yes. Yes, and yes, Gaurav, I agree. I think yesterday we also had Prime Minister Narendra Modi talking about hackathons. So yeah, I think a lot of good stuff evolving. Uh, I think the message, I think that is my last slide. And the message that I really want us to say is this is tough. A lot of us are not liking it, and we are in a tough scenario. But in some ways, we have no choice but to look for the opportunities in this. I mean, the opportunity could be in any of these ways or others. The opportunities for a lot of, when I've heard conversations around small and medium enterprises, a lot of us work for large companies. The SMEs are really hit, and it's very difficult. I mean, for them to survive, to rebound. A lot of SMEs are getting together to form communities to solve their issues. Just because they don't bring the scale, they're doing something niche, something fantastic. The example, I mean, I'm just saying, for example, let's suppose you have auto AI, PM Auto, and you have a PPM company that's acquiring it. They need to come together. I mean, maybe the smaller companies it's much harder. PM Auto is not the right example there, but so the ecosystem also needs to become more collaborative, and has to kind of reduce some of the boundaries that organizations have put on themselves to help them survive. So the value chain in large organizations is impacted. They are not resilient, and that impacts the larger organization, and that is a big challenge. And how we work on that, as project managers, as program managers, is key. So, but the intent is for us to try and focus on some positives that are coming our way. I mean, I think we as project managers need to be intelligent. We need to stop, scaring ourselves, saying AI will take our jobs away, something else will take our jobs away. We said the same when Agile came. We said the same when something else will come. We'll say the same. It's only about us adapting. It's an opportunity for us to learn and shift. It is not going to be easy, but I know in the 80s and the 70s, when the computers came in, we had all this discussion on how there'll be large-scale job loss. I mean, there was job loss, but we adapted. It is arguable over a period of 10, 20, 30 years whether that was a positive adoption or not, in every case. But we largely reap benefits from it. So I think that's the thought I would like to leave with all of you. I thank all of you to have listened very patiently, and I'm sorry if at points it became too, maybe too technologically, the examples were too technical, but I will be happy to take some questions now, and if we have time, I'll go on to the quiz, but if there's no time, we'll leave it, but maybe some questions if anyone has. I know on the chat there are some questions. I've tried to answer those as well.
Karthik, this is Gaurav. Just one question on the AI. I believe you covered about that. So, can these technologies help us in doing risk sensors also, like to identify the impact, then the exposure and the probability?
Yes, yes. I think the example that I was giving you of sorry, I forgot the name of the company already. I think the one I was talking to you about on the risk management, yeah, they do that. So they will be able to give you like I mean, I haven't seen a risk impact matrix per se, Gaurav, but they are able to they will even quantify it and link it to possibly, some cost impacts. So they are able to do some of these. Again, to be careful, there I haven't seen full blown functionality of all of these tools. I've seen some aspects that demos give me a view of, but I think a lot of the ones that do scenario planning are able to do that.
Okay, Karthik, thanks.
Yeah. So for example, just to keep you there, the one that I was talking about earlier was this one. So there it does give. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Feel free to ask any question, because I'm still learning, and I'd like to hear your views, and something that you thought was not. How do you address stress and fatigue? Okay. Oops. Okay, there are some on the chat. Maybe I should go there and look, and that's the better way to do it. Yeah, I mean, I can only empathize with that question, Rakesh. I don't think, so I think it goes back. Actually, the only thing I can say is, as a lot of us are leaders. Um, um, I'm just going back to the slide where we talked about. So as leaders, if you look at this, the idea is about caring. We have to instill a culture of caring. I completely agree with you. A lot of us, including maybe I will blame myself, but sometimes when I don't, I may normally not call a colleague of mine after 7. I would tend to do that now. So I think these are practices, and this is about. Yeah. The thing is, we will tend to, it is taking a toll. And I think this is about setting practices in your teams, setting practices within your teams. If you're in lead positions to lead, you have to set that example. And I think that's the way it will shift. And I am sure policies will come around this, but we are not, I think they haven't evolved yet to the place where I can say that. So I think in the interim, the idea is to be able to set the right practices, be caring. We have to understand that. I mean, often as project managers and leaders, we are stuck between the senior management and let's say our teams, in being able to balance and being caring for our teams and being able to deliver what we have to do. So I think we have to continue to make that balance. This is not, there is no easy answer to this, really. I mean, and I completely agree with you. And I think I was actually telling myself that this is one weekend after which I'm not going to do anything next weekend, uh, from a work perspective. So you are right, you're spot on. Good answers are not there, but good leadership examples are very important. So I think please care, and please set a plan within your team, set a structure. You do your meetings at a certain time, whatever your context is. Are you in a completely remote scenario? Are you completely, your teams are split? Whatever is the scenario. Somebody had a question on. One second, I'm sorry, I'm just catching up. Yeah, so somebody had a question saying, how much depth and focus should PMs give on learning new technology versus soft skills and product? Yeah, difficult question. It's easy for me to just say it depends on your context, but I think a little bit of both. The only thing I will say is that the technology aspects need to be understood. You don't need to be a hands-on technologist. You need to understand the concept, and you need to be able to see how it is applying to your area. So when we talked earlier and we showed, what are the possible future skills that you may need. The idea there was that rather than being an AI expert, you would need, just as an example, you would need to understand maybe what is the fundamental basis of the model in your case, and how does it apply in your project. And then you are able to give inputs to whoever is managing the AI, whether it's a virtual assistant or it's something else. Then that's the case. The only thing I feel, and I believe me, I'm while I talk about technology, I've always seen myself as a PM generalist. I feel we have to have some sense of it, especially if you're in the technology field, and especially if some of these technologies are getting applied. And the behavioral aspect, it's a very good question, because on one side we are being hit by technology, and the other side we need the behavioral skills because we are working remotely. We could, a lot of things we could get away with before, while in our office premises. We are not being able to do that now. We are kind of, we have to explicitly communicate, we have to clarify, we have to listen to our teams a bit more than usual. They may have personal challenges more than usual. So if you look at the current context, these two things are coming to us from both sides, and we are a bit of a sandwich. So the answer is both. a percentage is, if I give you one, is going to be completely meaningless because it is contextual. But I think you should not drop any of those. You need to show leadership much more in this scenario till the organization you are in, the environment you are in, the company that you work for have stabilized the approach for themselves. I mean, I hope that answers your question. There's a question on competency, sorry, on negotiation. I'm just checking what that is.
So there was one question above which says that how to have negotiations with the family, right? When you are working from home for long hours.
Yeah, very, very true. Very true. I, um, I mostly have a losing battle, so I'm not a good expert on that. No, but I think to be very fair, my family, because they're sitting not far from me, I have to say nice things. They've been very supportive. But I think it's a very, very good point. It's very interesting that we have a lot of challenges that we're not even realizing, and one of the things is that, as you are negotiating all the time, your leaders are kind of taking you a little bit more for granted than before in terms of the hours you spend. It is hard. It is not easy. I wish I had a mantra which would allow this to disappear. But yeah, I mean, the only thing I can say is that if you follow in the mythology, then then the gods also need to negotiate with their family. So if you're Shiva, then you're still negotiating with your family for your time versus the time you spend with your bhakt. So it's hard. We need to be sensitive to them. Some of our family members are also working. They have their time also away, and then there are things to be taken care of. It's not at all easy. Yeah, so I think this was a question that somebody had asked. Negotiation with family. I really think it should be an area that HR should really focus on. Is all I can say. I think there was a question. I don't see the person's name, was saying more AI. Talk about more in terms of relation to planning, scheduling, risk. When we are saying, and the question is, any light you can throw on AI will matter to other PM areas. So anything specific that you have in mind that you think I would like to cover, then I can do that. So I mean, I don't know on. I wouldn't say AI. Let me talk generically on technology as such. One of the things we have to keep in mind is the impact when it happens is not just coming from AI. It will be the combination of things like AI, IoT, RPA, cloud, all of the blockchain. If you put all of these together, and when all of these reach a maturity stage, then you will see impacts. For example, sourcing is a clear example of this. Because there is a lot of progress on blockchain as a technology in these areas, whether it's legal or it's procurement. Some of the people in financial services will relate to it, with multiple entity transactions, with payments. So it will, if I'm talking about my procurement management area, it is going to impact. And again, a lot of your vendor assessment, vendor management as a whole could get impacted by AI. Again, I haven't seen, and I would clearly accept I haven't enough knowledge in the procurement area from an AI perspective to make a statement on where it is today. But there are some tools that are coming your way. So I would actually see the combination of these technologies making a much larger impact than individually. So if you look at construction or manufacturing industries and project management, there you will see IoT with the combination of AI ML is going to play a very significant role. So if you're at oil rigs or you're at construction sites, um, these are large ones, with large companies. There are steps in that direction where we are, where there are IoT sensors and data, and you add data science to all this. All of these are kind of, they are not very siloed. While most of the technologists want to keep them siloed, they are not very siloed. They are quite converging, but at a distant future point, is the way I see it. But yeah, if you were talking about any other project management area, I'm really happy to answer that. I think the challenge is also, I think there was another question on this. The challenge is always adoption. The challenge is always the business case, you know. And an example, I mean, if you talk about today the research versus the actual use cases that are getting implemented, maybe AI ML is not a good example because it's probably more mature in its journey. But if you talk about, let's say, blockchain, even in the, I mean, outside of the financial services, you don't see too many use cases. So I think the adaptation is the challenge, and this perception that this is going to be an overnight story is also wrong, and that doesn't help the the whole adoption exercise. So I think adoption is not easy. We have to bring it. It has resistance from us as human beings. As you know, it is not. It is very interesting that as project managers we may view that the technologies will exist, but this will impact the project management. But I remember a colleague of mine who was at Google was saying that there was this PM. There's a Google AI guru. I forget his name, who was speaking to a lot of the developers in Google, and basically he said once AI comes in, you guys are not going to have a job. So it's to me overstated. It's all sometimes we blur the boundary between science fiction and science, and we say there is this AI has this convergence point where where robots will take over. Um, yeah, I mean, great to hear, and it's I'm not saying that it is not possible, but I think there is going to be multiple phases of failure, of attempt and failure before we get to anything like that. And by the time we would have, as humans, understood this and maybe also understood how to harness it. What is your gut feel of likely status of PM beyond 2030? Believe me, if I had any idea like that, um, I would be making a lot of money. No clue, no clue. Um, I would say you would start seeing some real meaningful convergence of these technologies that will impact our areas in project management, but also also you will start seeing some more, let's say, end-to-end meaningful visible use cases. That's how I see it. I mean, this is going to come in waves. I don't see it I don't see it at all as coming next day. But beyond 2030, seriously, it's beyond my pay grade to answer that. Seriously, no clue. Somebody was saying that the income tax department is using that. So if you could please unmute yourself and maybe talk about it a minute. AI, because I'm not fully aware of that. So are they building models to figure out delinquents? Is that what it is? Okay. I think I have answered most of the questions. I don't know if anyone has any question. I'm actually done. I apologize. I had an Independence Day quiz all set up. I had two options to do it, online and on PPT, but I think we are running out of time, and I would respect your time. I know today would have been very hard for you to negotiate, so I apologize for that as well. But thanks for being such patient listeners. So if anyone has a question, please.
Thanks, Karthik, for this wonderful session.
Thank you.
Now, two things before we end the meeting. One is a vote of thanks. I would like to invite Priya for giving vote of thanks. And after that, I would request Shri Bharat Bhagat, our president, to give you token of appreciation as a certificate, as a token of appreciation for your time and your knowledge sharing. So first of all, over to Priya.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ketan sir. And Peter Drucker once said, and I quote, "The best way to predict the future is to create it. And if you think you cannot create the future, think twice." And today's session by Karthik really did have me transmitted to that future. And the future of project management with AI, ML, chatbots, and whatnot. Right. And I think we got that guardrails at how the future of project management would be. And someone asked a question on how it would be on 2030. I think we have some guardrails as to how it will be in. And I see a lot of research and study which has gone in today's session. It shows, Karthik. So great job. Keep it up. And I see, I got a lot of ideas about the panel discussion that's going to happen on August 28th on virtual collaboration from your session. I've noted down the questions and I'm giving you due credit right now for that.
No, most welcome.
And a lot of ideas for my future of PM work blog on projectmanagement.com as well. So these are the few takeaways for me from the session and which is like irreplaceable for me. And last but not the least, thank you for accepting that invite to speak at such a short notice. And it's like an instant. And this is a true testimony of a leader, someone who has a lot of knowledge, someone is confident to lead through uncertainty. So thank you for that. And thanks, Gaurav, my partner in crime, for suggesting Karthik for the session and instantly sending the WhatsApp message to Karthik, his email ID, his number, so that we could coordinate with him and, you know, put it through this session. And Ketan Gandhi, thank you for putting this in such a short notice. And I see a good turnaround, everyone. Thank you for turning out for the session.
Thank you, Priya. My pleasure. Anytime.
Over to you, Ketan, sir.
Thanks, Priya, for that wonderful vote of thanks. Now over to Shri Bharat Bhai for giving the presentation. Once Bharat Bhai gives his few words, then I'll share my screen where we can show everyone the actual certificate. Right now, I'm not sharing, otherwise Bharat Bhai's video will not come. So Bharat Bhai, over to you.
And I really appreciate Mr. Karthikeyan for remembering your days of Mumbai and TCS and then going to Bangalore chapter. I believe you are a part and parcel of Mumbai only. And that reminds me the way you have given in-depth details of AI, artificial intelligence, right from various tools and various technology that reminded me of my days of 1970s and 80s where we were working on IBM's 1401 and 1410 with assembler language and card punching and card pushing and scheduling at the night 2 o'clock for compilation. And then my boss later on told me, which I learned later on from him really, every technology changes in 3 years. So when Gartner has predicted 2030, he should have remembered that basic fundamental that technology changes every 3 years. We learned from the days of COBOL to DBase and DBase to FoxPro and FoxPro to database languages like Oracle and SAP and other things. And today we are talking of this project management tools by automated tools by under artificial intelligence. And I remember, I'm still wondering that when Gartner said that there will not be job, it's not like that. There will be, I think, 10 times jobs in this type of functioning, and people, personal, will be busy doing such type of working from home only, creating a lot of piece of products. Because in those days, we were programming how to do it. And now the days have changed, what to do it. That is the only thing that people will start doing. And further, what they wish to do it, that will be start doing it another 3 to 5 years. And we do not predict, as Priyaji has mentioned, prediction is not easy. You create the history and develop it. So that way, I think, I agree with your statement also. Somebody has asked you the question, what do you predict in 2030? But I fully agree with you. We can't predict because technology, again, I'm repeating same statement, technology changes every 3 years. Thank you very much. Over to Ketan bhai, the presentation of the certificate.
Thanks, Bharat bhai. I'll just share my screen.
Yeah, thank you very much. Which is in a play mode, no? It's an edit mode. Okay. Mr. Karthik, kindly accept as a presentation, I mean, as a token of appreciation and love with you, please accept this on our record, these certificates of your speakership with us, and we will remember you again, and we may call you again for your learnings and features also. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Very, very kind of you. Thank you, Bharatji. Thank you, Ketanji, and thank you, Priya, and thank you, Gaurav. It couldn't have happened without you, and I'm happy. I managed to keep you all awake on a Sunday morning. So thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the
Thanks,
day.
Karthikeyan, for the wonderful session, and I hope we'll invite you again for some more insights into the future. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for attending this, and we will send you a link for giving us feedback. Please provide your feedback for the session on the link which will send you, which will be sent by our chapter members. Okay, so please provide us feedback so that we can improve on anything, or we can do similar sessions in future. Thanks a lot. Thanks.
I will add one more thing. Please give your suggestions. Please give your suggestions for the new topics and new speakers as well. There is a comment part you can add in that thing. There are the two things you can add apart from the feedback form. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a nice Sunday.
Thank you, everyone.